Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
I won't be able to stay on long. I have another meeting at 12:10.
That's okay. We're just going to wait just a few more minutes, I think, in case anybody else wants to jump on, and then we will get started. So. Okay, do you want to start? All right. So welcome everyone to I See Voices. Activism is our legacy. This is a archival project that the Center for Ideas has been doing all year, and hopefully we will be continuing to do this to capture the voices of activists on our campus, past and present. Every Heritage Month, we open up the interviews for a public viewing to give people an opportunity to interact with some of our movers and shakers on campus and ask them questions of their own. But all of our interviews follow the same format. We ask a set of standardized questions so that they all sort of follow like an expected foundation there. And then afterwards, those questions can be whatever you'd like. We've never done it on Zoom. So this is our first Zoom. And this is also our first alum interview. So we're very excited about that. Thank you so very much for doing this, Rowan. Yeah. And so the questions are a little different for alum because Rowan is no longer a student, but that's still really an important sort of idea to have, a voice to have on campus. So the questions will be slightly modified, but very much following the same pattern. rather than having people ask their questions, I mean, I guess you could get on video and ask your questions, but we were thinking it would be easier for you to use the group chat. I will monitor the group chat, and Josie will be our monitor that is interviewing and doing like video and stuff. So that sounds great. I'm going to turn it over to Josie.
Hey, hi, my name is Josie. I work in ideas as an IPE, and I'm very excited to interview Rowan today as our first alum interview and also our first Zoom interview, which is pretty cool. So a little bit about Rowan. Rowan Larkin is class of 2019. They studied sociology, women's and gender studies, and Asian American studies during their time at Ithaca College. As a student, they were a passionate member of the Asian American Alliance and a founding member of IC Mixed, which is something that I'm part of now, which I'm very happy about. They served on the e-board of both organizations for 3 years. Rowan now works as an administrative assistant in the office of the Provost, and they also offer support to the Students of Color Coalition. They are passionate about making spaces for marginalized students to feel a sense of community and belonging. So like Omega said, we have a couple questions and then it's open floor. But the first question is, what is your definition of an activist?
So when Omega sent me the questions, that was sort of a daunting one to read first. I really have been thinking about this a lot since I was invited to do this talk. I think this is something that I have struggled with on my own for like a long time. Like, what is an activist, and how, like, what does it mean to identify as an activist? What does it mean to be involved in activism? And I feel like the best description I could come up with for myself is a person who wants things to be better for other people and actively does something to like change things for the better, not just for themselves, but for other people. And someone who often goes out of their way. So not necessarily as a job or as something that you get something out of, but just somebody who is actively involved in something that will improve other people's lives in some way. And I think the reason why I struggled with what an activist was a lot, especially in school, was because of, I think, the overarching idea that an activist is like a person who stands out front of a building and yells and is holding a sign, and like that's what activism is. And I think it has helped me to see the different ways that you can be involved in activism. It could be, you know, volunteering your time to causes that need it, showing support to your friends and family who are going through difficult times, like reaching out to your friends who are influenced by things that are going on in the world more deeply than other people might be. Spreading awareness and educating yourself on topics that both are relevant to you and are not. And just, you know, I really feel like at the heart of it, an activist is somebody who is trying to make something better for other people.
Thank you so much. That was such an uplifting definition of activist. So personally, what is your history with activism, and why did you get involved with your specific movements?
So freshman year at IC, I went to the cultural leadership retreat. They change the name every year, so I'm not sure what it is now. But that really started things for me. And after going to that, I became a diversity peer educator, which is what the ideas peer educators are now. As you can see, they changed the names of everything. But yeah, my first real step into feeling involved in trying to make a difference on campus was being a diversity peer educator, and not just not just giving the presentations and like trying to educate fellow students, but even just being in that room with a bunch of fellow diversity peer educators who wanted things to change, wanted to be people who were making the campus a better place, wanted to be people who were helping other people understand things that they might not understand. And that was really my first step into activism and wanting to be more involved. And honestly, I was terrified of all of the diversity peer educators. I thought they were all so cool, and I thought they all knew way more than me. I felt a lot of imposter syndrome as a diversity peer educator. I can't remember for sure, but I might have been the only freshman when I started as a DPE. So everyone else was older than me. They'd been in college longer than me. They all had these causes. I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid I was going to say the wrong thing. So I ended up actually leaving the diversity peer educators after maybe a year and a half, because I think I really joined before I had accepted myself and what I wanted to do as an activist, which is sad. I really value the time I spent as a DPE, but I definitely think most of my growth as somebody who was involved on campus came after that through my involvement in student organizations. So sophomore year, I became the secretary for Asian American Alliance. And I feel like I really fell into a lot of my leadership roles on campus. And then I had to grow into them. I think I really started seeing the meaningful change I could make on campus through my leadership roles in Asian American Alliance, specifically with adding more of an intersectional lens to what we talk about as Asian Americans, especially as like a queer, trans, non-binary Asian American who's not East Asian, who's mixed. All of these things that I wasn't seeing in dominant Asian American narratives that I really needed to see. So I ended up really stressing like queer identity in Asian American Alliance, looking at discrepancies between, or, you know, pulling apart Asian American data to look at not just Asian Americans as like a whole, because Asian Americans is such a diverse group of people with so many different cultures and languages and struggles that are not monolithic or the same. So really breaking up narratives about Asian Americans, I feel like was a huge thing for me. And the other thing I started sophomore year is my friend Walt Martson, who also graduated with me in 2019. The way I remember it is he just made a Facebook post like, hey, I am mixed race and I want to talk about it. Does anybody want to talk about it? And I and a couple other people were like, yeah, definitely. I definitely want to talk about that. And we ended up meeting and having really meaningful discussions about what it was to be a mixed race person, what it was to be a person who is either viewed as a person of color or not viewed as a person of color, and having heritage or family members who are people of color. Sort of all of these conversations that I really had needed to have my whole life and never did. So we ended up making a club out of it, and I am so, so happy that the club is still active today. But I really feel like a lot of the things I did on campus were for people who are like me. So people who feel like even in a minority group, they are between the lines or don't fit in or don't feel like they belong. And all of the involvement I had was trying to make the spaces for students who felt like that and were like me. And that's still what I sort of am hoping to do today for students as a staff member now.
Thank you. And you're doing great. So, so going off of that, a very related question. So how would you say that your identity plays into your activism as, like you said, so
Yeah, definitely. I think especially in the beginning, my activism has been very identity based. I am from Maine, which is, I don't know the numbers now, but back then it was like 96% white. I did not grow up with a lot of friends of color or even like people of color around me. We never talked about race in my home, despite the fact that I come from a mixed race family. So I feel like I really grew up lacking the conversations I needed to understand my world. And I really, like, coming to college really enabled me to not only have the words to understand my experience, but to see like how many people have had similar experiences to me. Like when I got to school, there were, it's funny because when you get to IC and you go into the communities of color, there's a lot of people who are like from the city and they're like, I have never seen so many white people in my entire life. But for me, I was like, this is the most people of color I have ever seen in a room together. And that was so cool for me. So I honestly forgot what your question was.
it's totally cool. You totally answered it, but it was just about like your identity and activism, which you
Oh, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No,
Um,
you're good.
yeah. So like I said before, I think having that, lacking that sense of belonging and lacking that understanding and having other people who understood me growing up, my activism has really been about creating the space for people who also have those experiences and really need a place to process and understand themselves and each other together. Because some of the most meaningful experiences I had at IC were just sitting in a room with people who were like me and being like, we really all felt that. Like, we really all experienced that and we've never talked about it before. And that is just so empowering and not unifying, but it connects you with other people in a way that you really need growing up and all the way after that. So that is something I think that is so unique about college campuses like this, is that you have so much opportunity to have those spaces and connect with people. But yeah, I definitely also, even so I came into college not knowing that I was trans. That's sort of something I also grew into while at college. So I was always, I feel like my activism has always been pushed by my own experience and my own experiences of being, experiencing microaggressions and experiencing like not being comfortable in my environment and knowing that other people aren't either and wanting people to be. You know, like I feel like a lot of my activism has come from me not feeling safe or comfortable in a space, but really wanting to and really wanting other people to. So I'd say my identity is deeply involved in my activism. And honestly, I will also say that I could be more involved in activism that is not directly related to some of my identities. I think that's something that I definitely am trying to work on and broaden my horizon, because like race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and identity like that, those are all things that are so close to me and stuff I want to learn about. But obviously those aren't the only identities that matter or that experience hardships due to their identities. So I think one thing that I have been trying to do and still am trying to do is be involved in things that I care about that aren't directly related to my own race or my own queerness. But yes, I'd say identity is at the heart of activism for me.
And that is so powerful to admit that. So thank you. So going off so into your activism, what are the projects that you were and are involved in?
So I think that is a really great question for me as an alum. The transition between student life and like full-time working life, especially before all of this, all of the quarantine, all of the working from home, that was really something I was struggling with. I was really struggling with dealing with working 9 to 5, having different responsibilities, having different sort of permissions on campus, like having a different role. Dr. Gonzalez of the CSCRE was my advisor throughout school. So I was very close with her. And I remember talking to her and I was like, I don't feel different from students, but I am, and it's really weird. And she was like, yeah, like the freshmen here, they don't care that you are an alum. You are an adult staff member to them, and like there's nothing you can do to change that. So back to your question, it's been weird for me to sort of balance work and activism and what I'm allowed to say now as a staff member and what involvement I'm able to have as a student, and then also figuring out like what does activism look like outside of a college campus, because that's really where my activism has always been focused. So now that I am not a college student, what am I doing with that, you know? So I really think that's still something I'm in the middle of, just navigating those things. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot, especially when I go back to student events that are so empowering, like the MLK presentation earlier in February. That blew me away. And I guess as a student, I never realized that as a student, you are to some degree encouraged to speak out for yourself and to, advocate for your causes and to be insurgent to some degree. And once you're a professional, that changes. And I never really realized the freedom that I had as a student to say what was on my mind. So yeah, my activism has definitely changed and even, I would say, dwindled in the time that I have become a professional, and that's really something that I'm trying to navigate. One of the main things that I have been trying to do is stay in contact with students of color, and be involved with the Students of Color Coalition, which was not a thing when I was a student. So it just started this year after I graduated. But I was so excited to see it, and I really want it to succeed, you know? So the main thing that I am currently working on, that is still involved in the things that I used to do, is sort of supporting the Students of Color Coalition, especially with technical things. I learned a lot in executive boards of clubs. So just helping out students of color do what I was trying to do as a student is one of the things that I am still really enjoying and really valuing about, especially about still being here at Ithaca and not, back at home or somewhere else.
And as a member of the Students of Color Coalition, thank you for everything that you do. You're awesome.
Yeah, of course.
So you said like you're involved in Students of Color Coalition, and it's hard to stay involved as a professional, and there's so many more things to consider. But with the activism that you have completed and that you're currently doing, who do you hope to reach?
I'm still hoping to reach the students that feel left behind, you know. I had such a difficult time in college. I really realized over the years in college just how bad the environment was for me, the academic environment. And I came from a background where I was used to like academics, and that was my life. And back to my identity playing into my activism, I knew how I felt, and I didn't want other people to feel that way, and I still feel like that. Like, I hear students of color talking, and not only have I experienced that, but I'm now a staff member and an alum, and that means something, and that means I have experiences that can benefit those people. And so I am still trying to elevate students who feel marginalized or left out or not seen by their professors, by their curriculum, by their residence directors, you know, like I really see the value in college, but I also know how hard it has been for so many students to get through it with everything they have to deal with. You know, I could name a million things that students have to deal with that are exasperated or exacerbated if you are experiencing racial microaggressions in class, if you're being tokenized, if you're being misgendered everywhere, you know, like if you don't have the same economic privilege as the people around you. Like I really am still hoping to at least help students who feel like they don't belong here or who feel like they don't belong anywhere, and sort of just reach out and be like, you do belong here, and you know, what can I do to help? What can we do to help as a community? Yeah.
Awesome. So, in the same sort of vein, how would you suggest that those same people get, whether they're college students or alum like yourself, how would you suggest that they get involved with that branch of activism?
I think, as I said before, with the diversity peer educators, the word activism is scary to people. Like, defining an activist and what activism is, that's daunting. And there is that idea that like everything has to be correct and you have to know everything off the bat, which is impossible. So how are you going to start being an activist if you can't achieve the impossible? I really feel like it starts with listening to people, listening to people who experience things that you aren't experiencing and who are experiencing the same things that you're experiencing, and being like, what have we done for ourselves? What can we do for each other? What can I do for you? And obviously, like, knowing what's going on in the world, knowing how past events have influenced what's happening now and what's happening to me, what's happening to you. But really, I think the easiest way to get involved is to just listen to what is happening with other people and hear like, this is what's going on, and like, this is what I need that I'm not getting. And then sort of asking yourself, like, how can I be involved in that? And I think something that I have struggled with is sort of a feeling of responsibility as an activist, as like, oh, like, I should be changing this, like, I should be doing better, I should be out there all the time, like, why am I I don't know, why am I watching this same movie again when I could be watching this informative documentary about, whatever, like, so I think what I have come to understand and allowed myself to do is, any sort of impact I can have, no matter how small, is still some sort of impact. So it doesn't mean like, getting SGC to write a bill or getting some company to divest. While those are awesome things, it could just be like reaching out to your friends and being like, how are you doing in this quarantine? Is there anything I can do to help you? Like, do you have food? Are you doing okay emotionally? The little things that you can do for people, even just listening to people, like, just wanting to make things better for people, I think, is all you need to get started in activism. And then you just need to listen and hear where you can do something about what's going on. And that can look like a bunch of different things. It's not just holding a sign.
So on that, so how would you say that people should become involved if they're just trying to be an ally if they're not directly involved?
That's a really good question. Again, like, listening is the first step. Educating yourself. And I think where people might get nervous or where people start faltering is when they get to sort of the advocate stage. And I think that's because when you're advocating for a group of people or for a cause, you still need to listen. Like, I am always learning every day. I will look back on things that I said last year and be like, that is so wrong. Like, why did I think that? Why did I say that? I can't believe that I said that. So knowing your positionality in whatever cause you are involved in, and knowing where your voice might be able to cut through, and knowing when you should be elevating other people's voices is important. So, like, for example, there's a lot of super well-meaning professors on campus who will ask everyone for their preferred pronouns in classes. And I have felt different ways about that at different points in time in my time at IC. It's absolutely meant to be like an inclusive thing, but they're not preferred pronouns. They're just like the pronouns that people use, which is something that you would learn by listening. But also, as a person who uses they, them pronouns, I know that when we go around the room and we all say our pronouns, one, no one's listening to the pronouns. The only time they listen is if they land on someone and they say a pronoun that they don't look like. So, like, if there is a person who appears to you as a woman, you're not going to remember the pronouns unless there's something that you thought they weren't. So, like, unless that person says something that isn't she, you're not listening. But also, I'm going to get off topic. Anyway, there's a lot in that. And I know that saying my pronouns in that instance is going to out me, is going to isolate me, is going to make it very obvious that I am different from everyone else in the room. That is the only, if people hear me, it will single me out. So being an ally, I feel like, has to do with listening to people with experiences like that. And I don't have an answer for that. I appreciate when people ask for pronouns in classes. I often would say my pronouns anyway if they didn't ask for them, which would also be embarrassing and isolating, and I hate it. But I feel like to be an ally is to sit in that between the lines area with the people that are there. So I don't know. Like, should you be asking people's pronouns in classes? I don't know. But like, to be an ally would be to listen to students and be like, this is how that makes me feel, and I don't really know what to tell you about what you should be doing with that. But it's important to hear those things. The same with like curriculum about curriculum taught by professors that do not belong to whatever identity group or culture that they're teaching. Listening to how their teaching impacts their students is not necessarily a criticism, or not necessarily like someone saying like, this is how you should teach, this is how you shouldn't teach, or whatever. I think it really all just comes back to listening and taking into account what people are saying about their own experiences. I feel like I really strayed there, but I hope that made sense.
Not at all. That was perfect. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. And you're absolutely right about everything. So, on top of all of that, on top of all the considerations that you have to manage, I know you touched on this a little bit before, but how did you balance like during college, like taking care of yourself, being active, recognizing all of these things, and even now, like working, school, all of that? So
yeah, I think the way that I learned to balance these things is that I used to not balance them. I used to put 110% of my energy into other people. And that's not good for you. You can't do that. You can't sustainably do that. So I really feel like I learned balance by pushing myself to a breaking point and realizing that I can't do that. So balance for me is about making sure I don't get to a point where I'm completely only doing one thing, not taking care of myself, only taking care of others, only doing work and not having time for myself, spending time with myself, checking in with myself. And I am sad that I ever got to a point where I was literally what I would consider rock bottom. But at the same time, I'm really glad that I'm the person that I am now. And I'm really glad that I can see what lack of balance can do. So yeah, and like to balance is a balancing act. So it's still something that you have to navigate and negotiate at all times. And your capacity to do certain things is going to change at different points in your life. So I think the best thing I can say for keeping your life balanced is one thing that has worked for me when I really feel like activism is overtaking my mind or work is overtaking my mind, is thinking about control and what is it that I can control and what can't I control. So But I want to say a week before we were all quarantined, students were on spring break. I was reading all this news about COVID. I was just thinking about the impact on the economy, on the most vulnerable people in our economy, the people who have to be working minimum wage jobs, the people who are out of work and rely on the income they have. I was just sort of spinning out with worry about everything going on in the world. And to be concerned is one thing, but I don't want to say to stress out, to only concentrate on bad things, I guess, is not healthy. So by that, I don't mean like, I don't want to know what's going on. I don't want to know other people are having a bad time, whatever. It means like, okay, we're not in a great place right now. Where am I? And what can I do with that? What can I control? So I can't cure COVID. I can't get everyone out of quarantine. What can I do? I can reach out to my friends. I can be on, mutual aid Tompkins and see what community members need. I can be purchasing stuff from local restaurants because I'm like in a position to do that. So really looking at what is within my control to help a situation that's out of my control. And that has really helped me with balance and also with sort of like my feeling of responsibility, because I'm not responsible for the economy, but it is something that I am concerned about, and I'm concerned about other people, and identifying the things that I can control in a situation that makes you feel so helpless really helps me balance that feeling of responsibility, that feeling of helplessness, personal life and activism. So yeah, and that's a pretty recent thing that I have started using. So it's definitely a growing process, and it's definitely something that is always going to be changing for me and for everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was really good. But, so the next part is just about the future. So, how do you see, obviously, your past graduation? How do you see activism playing a role even beyond right now, or just how it's been like directly after graduation?
Yeah, that's also something that I've been really struggling with the past 7 or 8 months, especially because I was lucky enough to get this job at IC. So I am in a position where I'm worrying a little bit less about where I am. I feel like I'm in a very comfortable place. So I almost feel like I've stagnated in a way. But on the other hand, I really like my job. I really love being on campus. I really love still seeing all the students and all the staff and professionals that were so beneficial to me. I love seeing where the school is going and seeing what students are doing. So I'm really struggling with, like, what do I want to do with my time? How can I be of service to other people? Like, what is the best use of my time and expertise, or my skill set or whatever? So I really, to be clear, I had no aspirations at graduation. I did not have any goals. My goal was to graduate, and I did that, and I'm so happy. But I did not really know what I was doing after that, and I still sort of don't. So I guess the point that I'm in right now, because I am lucky enough to be in a position where I have a job and I'm able to work from home, I am in a stable place right now. I'm sort of thinking, what do I want to do and where is that lacking right now in what I'm doing? Because I really enjoy my job, but I do feel like I am not as active in certain things as I want to be. I want to have more contact with students. I want to be the staff member that I needed as a student. How can me going beyond college campuses impact people? So yeah, I that's really a question that I'm actively trying to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out if I want to put myself through grad school. And I say put myself through because I hate academia. Yeah, I'm really still figuring it out, but I'm really trying to figure out how I can be balanced and be happy and satisfied while still being able to put myself to work and do things that are useful to other people.
So, well, thank you for being honest. And so what do you hope that your legacy will be at Ithaca College and beyond?
Honestly, Asian American Alliance, when I became involved with it, I believe the org just had its 25-year anniversary. So we had a great foundation. We were always great at transitioning. We had years of history with the organization. IC Mixed did not have that. IC Mixed was started, I think, in 2016, 2017. We didn't have any foundation. We were trying to build it for the entire time that I was a part of IC Mixed. So for me, one of the things that I really want to see is IC Mixed to continue in whatever form. I know that when I was graduating, we were really worried about retention. We were really worried about the e-board. But like for me, like as somebody who put so much energy into that organization because I knew how important it was to me and the people involved in it, I would be okay if the organization dwindled a little and then, you know, in 5 years, some student was like, why don't we have this club? And then somebody's like, oh, it looks like they used to, and it gets revived. So just, beyond just the literal, I hope that the club that I helped create continues, I think for me, like what I want my legacy to be is just, and I feel like my legacy is a very presumptive word for me. I hope that students are still able to be crafting spaces for themselves and creating spaces for each other and listening to each other and having those conversations that they aren't able to have anywhere else. And whether that's through IC Mixed or something else, I really hope that that's able to happen. And whether or not that's through, you know, a student going to one of my workshops and being like, wow, like that was a really cool conversation. I want to learn more. Or I want to have a conversation like that with other people. I really valued that about college. I really valued the ability to create your own spaces. And I really want to see that continue. And of course, I would love for IC Mix to continue. But it's more the idea and what IC Mixed represented than it is IC Mixed as an organization, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And as one of the newer e-board members of IC Mixed, your impact is still totally felt. You've done amazing shit, and I'm so happy to be there. I'm so happy that you created it. So thank you.
Me too. I am so happy that it's still a thing, and definitely like I'm available if you ever want or need anything. I definitely, one of the things that I've also struggled with in this position is not being as in contact with students. Like students will be talking to me and I'll be like, what is going on? Like students just have this web that they're in, and they just know all these things that are happening. And I'm like, what are you like? And then I'm texting all my student friends, like, did you hear about this? Like, what is this? Can you please fill me in? Like, I want to be connected with students, and I am up in PRW, like away from students. I'm not in the middle of campus center. But yeah, I really want to be more involved with students because I do want to be the person that I needed as a student, in whatever capacity I can without a graduate degree, you know, as an assistant. Yeah.
So what would you say that your call to action is for those students?
I think because the students that I most want to reach are the students who feel like they don't have spaces or feel like they aren't seen. Sort of give yourself the space to make yourself seen. Like, give yourself the space to see other people so they can see you. You know, like, sometimes you do have to create your own spaces. And that's not necessarily what you want. We didn't, you know, it would have been great if we didn't have to create a club and there was already one. But like, be willing to take that risk, be willing to go through the hierarchy, if you have that capacity. Just be willing to fight for yourself and for the people who are like you, because like it does make a difference. Like, and even if it's just like one other person who's like, I feel like that too, and it's been really awesome to find someone that feels like that as well, like that makes a difference. So being who you are despite feeling like you are not welcome somewhere is so empowering to another person who is like you, who doesn't feel welcome. And I feel like I've really felt that as I've gotten older and I've seen like younger students coming in, younger mixed students, younger trans students. So I guess my call to action for Ithaca College students is you have the power to make things even just a little bit better for the students who come after you. And you have the power to make things a little bit better for anyone. Like it doesn't have to be, my activism has been very student and college centered, but it doesn't have to be. That can be applied to anywhere in your life. So you have the power to change things, even if it's for one person, even if it's just to make one person feel better or feel like they belong a little bit more. That's something that you have the power to do, and that's worth pursuing. That's worth putting energy into. If you have ever felt slighted or experienced a microaggression or felt like you don't belong somewhere, someone else has too, and you can be the person that is like, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you, or I felt like that too, or let's talk about this. Like, you can be the person that you wanted, or a person that you could have used as a younger person, I guess. You can be a person that helps people like you. And I think that's really powerful, and that's really something that is important to think about.
Thank you so much. That was really inspiring and powerful and such a light in such a crazy, scary, dark time. But thank you so much for answering all of those. I don't know if anybody else has any questions that they'd like to ask from our audience.
Audience members, you are welcome to type it in the group chat, or if you want, you can go on microphone and ask. We don't have that many people here, so it's not like we're gonna overwhelm the systems.
But while there's no one talking, I just wanted to say, um, I just saw one of the social media posts today. I was never the president of Asian American Alliance. I was the vice president for 2 years. I was the co-president of IC Mixed.
I apologize about that. I knew that, and I don't know why I wrote. I'm so
No,
sorry.
yeah, that's okay. I just, JC Quo.
That's right. JC was definitely the
Yes.
president. I knew that.
He was our president. Kudos to him. He was also great. He's in grad school now.
Okay, well, I think that you answered every single question so perfectly that I don't even have any more questions that I could think of. So
Well,
thank you
cool.
for everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really want to be involved in the things that were helpful to me. So it means a lot to me to be invited to things like this, be involved in ideas, be involved with students. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so this was our first alum interview. That was awesome. So thank you for kicking that off for us. And
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
if Nika has anything else, then I think that this is great. And yeah, I've never had to edit a virtual thing before, but
Thank you all for coming. Join us at 3 o'clock on our Instagram if you'd like for our Instagram chats that we do live every day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Center for Ideas. But yeah, thank you so much for coming, and look for I'm going to try and put this up on YouTube as soon as I possibly can. Usually I get to do a bit of editing for them, so that the beginning and ends aren't weird. But it might just be raw and awkward. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.